The question often gets asked of how can we undo Brexit? And I have been very clear from day one of Theresa May triggering Article 50, Britain's path to rejoining, the EU was pretty much set. It is not a matter of if we will rejoin the EU, it is pretty much a matter of when. And just as what the reasons were last time for us joining the EU, it was for economic reasons. And we are going to see those exact same economic pressures push the UK back into joining, the EU. And I think in terms of how it's going to happen, I think we will end up rejoining the customs union single market first, then just going for full membership. But there are probably a number of things that are going to happen first. Predominantly, of course, the fact that this is where we've got to separate things. The current parliamentary, that means all the MPs in the Conservative current parliamentary party are predominantly Brexiteers. They are very much committed to the idea of Brexit. But of course, that wasn't always the case. As we've said before, the only real Eurosceptics were, of course, the ERG prior to all this. And they were very much a very small but very powerful, influential group of MPs. They were always the ones agitating against EU things and stuff like that. You also, of course, had the pressure from UKIP as well, which really scared the Tories. Again, recently, it's been very much hinted at that Priti Patel's bizarre suggestion of, we can just force these migrant boats back across the channel, again, which would be very, very dangerous to do, has been pretty much mooted that this was to try in an attempt to try and cut off Nigel Farage, because they suspected that he might try once again, try and flank them on the right. And they do not want that to happen again. So there has to be a very, very clear situation where it is seen that these Brexit fanatics fail, and fail in a very, very big way. And especially to the Conservative Party, the economy matters, because they have pretty much always built their reputation on, we are the Conservatives, we can run the UK's economy properly, and we are the only party that can do so. But as Brexit is already doing, it is going to affect our economy very, very negatively. There is no economic upside to Brexit. We've said this multiple times before. It does not matter how many of these quote unquote trade deals we get done with countries halfway around the world, when we've got the single market sitting on our doorstep, building up more and more and more every single time. Again, as we've talked through other economists, they've described as most other economies around the world as being the hare who does a dash and then slows down, does another dash and then slows down. But while the EU market is the tortoise, it keeps on plodding along at a very slow rate, but it's catching up to the hare all the time. And economists have said that that type of market is far better for countries to have than the hare one, because you dash, you pause, you dash, you pause, and it's, of course, it's that boom and bust cycle. And not only that, but when that happens, the more moderates in the non-parliamentary party, who were again booted out, will then probably end up forming their own, shall we say, influential group within the Conservative Party. Expect that to happen at some point. A group of Conservative MPs who are committed to rejoining the EU. That is something that could happen and would be very interesting if it did happen. Because, as we said, they built their interest on that. So if that happens and their big project is failing, which again it is. It's just at the moment they're still in that early days. COVID is, they're saying, oh, all this damage is just COVID, you know, sweep it under the rug, as we've always said. But sooner or later, that rug is going to get very bumpy, and you're not going to be able to blame COVID forever. And as we've said before, I think 2022 is going to be very, very hard for a whole lot of people. But anyway, let's get jumping into this and talking about getting Brexit undone. So, this comes from the Auction Bylines. The title is Getting Brexit Undone. And like I say, if you would like to support the channel, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for all those people who do support the channel. Brexit is barely 9 months old, but it is not aging well. The fabulous deal that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the Brexit negotiator Lord Frost raved about just last December has lost all its shine, especially, it seems, to those who especially polished it. Having persuaded Parliament to vote for it as the lesser of two evils, both Johnson and Frost have fallen out of love with their offspring. Or perhaps, as many believe, they never had any faith in it in the first place, and just as a means to get the Brexit done, and are now falling out of love with their own Brexit deal. After months of very bombastic and often very aggressive rhetoric, Lord Frost's latest speech to the British-Irish Association last weekend came as no surprise, not at least to the EU. He spoke of the vexed question of the protocol, suggesting that it was as controversial as ever. And although the UK did not get everything wrong, he said that despite our best efforts, the issue is not settled. This being the case, we would hate to see what Lord Frost's worst efforts might actually look like. Frost denied that his EU bashing was an attempt to try and rally domestic support. In fact, to behave in such a way would be grossly irresponsible, he said. Long short of the story, Frost continues to insist that in order for the protocol to work, we need to see substantial and significant change. He obviously means that from the EU, of course, not us. By Monday morning, the media was full of the anticipation of the so-called sausage wars truce was about to be extended. The extending of 2 grace periods is due to expire on the 30th of September and the 31st of December. But it has been of great concern to businesses and industry as the harsh realities of Brexit become ever clearer. In addition to checks and restrictions have already been delayed once when the UK requested an extension for exporting chilled meats back in June. The EU responded with a package of measures aimed at addressing some of the most pressing issues. It agreed to the delay on the ban of British chilled meats and exports to Northern Ireland until the 1st of October. The European Commission Vice President Markus Solvak addressed it at the time as the EU was not issuing a blank cheque, and the UK would have to fulfil its very clear obligations during the 3 months, and we are still waiting. As the UK confirmed its unilateral decision to extend the grace periods, this time indefinitely, the EU responded with a statement. They stressed that the protocol was indeed an integral part of the withdrawal agreement and an agreed solution between the UK and the EU, and they reiterated the fact that both sides were legally bound to fill their obligations under the agreement. They're saying, our focus remains on identifying long-term, flexible, practical solutions to address the issues related to the practical implementation of the protocol that citizens and businesses of Northern Ireland are currently experiencing. However, we cannot agree to a renegotiation of the protocol. They have been very, very expressive of that ever since the Northern Ireland Protocol became the thing to talk about. The Commission even added that while it reserved the rights in respect to the infringement of proceedings, they were not moving ahead with the so-called infringing procedures launched back in March or taking any legal action for now. Because again, I think that they saw the brouhaha and hubbub and wanted to de-escalate the situation, because again, it was Britain that was doing all the escalating. They were just like, well, you know, come talk to us, let's sit down and talk about this. But the UK kept on insisting, we need a complete renegotiation of the protocol. They're like, no, we can't do that. Then it's going to be war. We're going to trigger Article 16. And of course, they would never, ever do it. Like I say, this is a gun that Frost has that does not work, is not loaded, and in a locked box in the other side of the room. He and Boris Johnson would never, ever pull that trigger. So Lord Frost suggested that the extended grace period would give the UK and EU more time to come to an agreement, as well as providing stability for businesses. Presumably, Lord Frost's interpretation of coming to an agreement involves having his cake and eating it, and a lot of flexibility on the EU's part. From the other side of the channel, the EU must be wondering how many times it must repeat itself. We will not agree to a renegotiation before the penny eventually drops, or the UK government finally understands how the EU works. How much easier would the whole process of Brexit could have been, perhaps even more friendly and collaborative, had the UK just accepted an extension transition period when the EU offered it. But then we wouldn't have got Brexit done. Many voters must have had their faith in this government to put the test over the recent months. They voted for Brexit based on promises of change, a better future, of hope, and instead they now see that lauded Brexit complaining the loudest, those who lauded Brexit loudest, complaining the loudest about the deal that they themselves negotiated. And again, it all goes back to if the voting public comes back and realizes not only A, has Brexit not been done, but A, is being done very badly and has actually negatively affected them. Like I said at the end, if you talk to Brexit supporters, they were convinced that the Brexiteers were telling them, like people like Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, even though Farage now will vehemently say he was never promising any type of prosperity or anything whatsoever. He will vehemently say he was never say that. But if you talk to Brexit supporters, that's what they say Farage was saying to them. They were promising a better future, a better economy for them, that their left behind areas would be picked up and taken on. But that's not been the case, as we've discussed many, many times. The new national insurance increase is going to be a direct tax on the working people of this country, and it is going to affect the poorest hardest, especially those people who voted for Brexit in the northern areas. Like I say, sooner or later, it's not just the penny dropping within the Conservative Party, but also the penny dropping in essentially the public's mind, and that will eventually drop about the Conservatives. Because as I've said before, the Conservatives are walking this bizarre tightrope. Their traditional southern base, they've all but abandoned, and is now vulnerable to the Liberal Democrats, which I don't think they realise just how vulnerable it actually is, considering there has not been, they've won one MP, but they've also won 2 local by-elections in what are considered to be very, very heavy Conservative voting areas. And in the north, if the northern voters and those northern MPs don't actually deliver to the northern voters on their promises, which they aren't, election time for them is going to be very, very sticky. Very, very sticky. And what happens if both of those support bases drop? Well, the Conservative Party won't be wiped off the map completely, but it could face its most significant defeat the Conservative Party has ever seen in decades. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.